Welcome back to the fourth episode of Our DNA. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brandon Duplessis, aka the Great Communicator. We got Philip Price and David Medina. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Doing good.
Mhm.
We were just talking a little bit because it's so hot on the topic right now, this Puff Daddy situation, P Diddy. And what was it you were saying,
Well,
Philip?
they one of his bodyguards said he didn't start out. He worked for him for a lot of years. He said he didn't start out to be who he was or who he turned into be, but he saw other powerful people doing what he was doing, and he thought that came with the territory that he could just treat people as, money. Money is it can really change who you are. You know what your belief system is, it can change you. Money can do that. That's why you
Yeah.
got to know yourself before you get it.
I'm always kind of a little, I think back and I'm like, oh, I wish I would have worked harder and done certain things to go into, say, the NBA. Like that was my path through middle school, high school, and by college, it started going downhill for me. But looking back and getting money at a young age
Oh,
and
wow.
seeing some of the decisions I've made while receiving that money, God knew I wasn't ready for the NBA. Uh, I think my life would have made a worse turn if I had, because I
I
wasn't.
got in trouble and I had no money. So I can't imagine if I had millions of dollars what I would have done. So,
Yeah,
so
and then and like you said, people teach you things and people give you advice, and these are other people you respect with money. So when you hear their advice and they're like, "Hey, yeah, everyone's doing it. Don't worry about it," it doesn't justify anything in any means, but it does happen, and it's easy to become a victim to it in a sense, like and not even know it.
perfect example of that was Michael Jordan. He said in his book, I read his book, and he said he was getting ready to, he had signed with the Chicago Bulls, and he was 19 years old. And his mom came in and says, "Well, I just quit my job." He says, "Why you quit your job? You think I'm gonna let you move to Chicago by yourself?" He said, "I'd come home and I'd had one game." He said, "I had 40 points and I'm feeling my oats." And my mom goes, "Make sure you vacuum the whole house." It took my ego down to nothing. He says, looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened to her because she didn't move out until he was like 22. He said it
Smart.
was the best because it kept him level. And he said he probably would have made more mistakes if she'd have let him come to Chicago but she wasn't doing it. She says, "No, I ain't letting you go to Chicago by yourself for millions of
He
dollars.
definitely
Come
would have
on,
made more
man.
mistakes.
Are you
He definitely
crazy?"
would have made more
Huh?
mistakes.
Oh, he said in the book, he says it was the best thing. He says it kept me level with it. He says I didn't get too full of myself. He says because you're 19 years old, you still score 40 points in the NBA game. You thinking, man, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. He says, but when your mom tells you to vacuum the whole house, he says it brings you right back down to earth.
You're right back down.
Yeah.
And you have a mom to go home to versus
Yes. Yes.
you score 40 points in the game and your boys ask you to come out, right? Now
Right.
you're messing around. Now you're getting caught up in a scene that one, you're not even 21 years old. You're still a child, but you're easily influenced, right? So I could
And
only
the
imagine.
most horrible thing could have been he might have met some of the ruthless women of Chicago that would have interfered with his life.
Yeah.
But he says because he was living with his mom and he had the utmost respect for his mom and dad, he did all the right moves. But she wasn't letting him go to Chicago by himself. He says she quit her job that day. He says, "No, I'm moving with you." So that's because can you imagine at 19, money is no object?
No.
I got in trouble and I was only making like $1,500 a month. And I got in trouble. So I can't imagine if I was making millions of dollars. Oh my God.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Might not be here today.
Oh, I would I wouldn't want that challenge, because you got to have a strong foundation around you, I think, to be able to navigate that. You got to pray that you got a good family that's going to be there to help you find your way, because there's so many stories of people. There's a Michael Ray Richardson. He was supposed to be the next Magic Johnson, and he left a little town in North Carolina to New York. They turned him, how that song, New York turned him out. He got into cocaine, he got into all kinds of things. And he was so great, the NBA just kept trying to give him a chance. They suspended him for 20 games, and then he suspended him for 30. And finally, they kicked him out and banned him for life. But he went over to Italy and played and met his wife and got married and changed his whole life in Italy. But he played 20 years in Italy. But he was an amazing ball player, but he never could get past. I mean, can you imagine from a little podunk town and they drop you in New York City? If you ever been to New York City, David, it ain't for the weak and faint at heart. That's not the place you want to get dropped off at.
Fair.
New York,
it's hard to stay grounded and stay humble, in a situation like that at that young. Because when you're that young, you think you can do it, right? You think you can handle doing all the partying, the girls, the drugs, and go play the game, or show up to work or do whatever it is you think you're hustling at. And you don't realize how much it really is tearing at your soul, taking you away from your purpose, really bringing your life down, and you don't even know it because you can't.
He lost himself. Mm-hmm. He got lost, man. And thank God he went to Italy, and he married a very beautiful woman, his wife, and they had 3 kids, I think, or 2 or 3 kids. And he got his life together, and he gave it up, and he was a star over there in the Italian league, and he was the chosen one. He was going to be that guy, man. He was that good. It's really sad. I mean, he was like can you imagine somebody like LeBron James that handled that from the time he was 15 years old? Mm-hmm. Think about that.
Wow.
And never got in trouble. And now he's a billionaire.
Yeah.
That's crazy. The goal.
That's the goal.
Yeah. That's what I've been working towards lately.
Yeah, you have been working towards that, man.
Yeah.
David's
how's business, man? How's business?
I've been grinding. I mean, first of all, I got the promotion at Anthem, the company I work for, and it's been great. I do a different job. I'm already making like triple the commission that I was making before, maybe even more than that. I'm just learning a lot. Like you were saying earlier, Philip, like that's my only goal there is to learn and get as much sales experience as I can and then contribute to my business more. And I've hired they've hired me. I got a new client on my music stuff. And now I got another client to manage their portfolio and their stuff. And I've just, I haven't seen any of the money yet, but it's coming all this month. So I'm excited for it.
But that's how the story is written. If you look at some of the biggest stars, somebody took a chance on them and promoted them. And when they got to the big time, they were there, You don't know. Everybody don't start at the top. Most of the stars have to. I mean, Taylor Swift, look at her. She didn't hit it big until she was like 20 something, Remember she started when she was like, 15, 16 years old. Remember?
Yeah. Well, David and
I she's the biggest artist in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. David and I met this afternoon. We had lunch together and, we talked about the idea of, and it was short, but we talked about how much experience is important. And the only way to get experience is to go through it. Right.
There's no other shortcut.
That 11 years Taylor Swift put into it, or, don't quote me on it, but, even my experiences have put me where I'm at after 15, 20 years in sales. Right. And even David, usually the first 6, 9 to 12 months in a job usually are, especially when you're commissioned or you're building something, are the hardest. You're going through this time where You're brand new. You don't know what you don't know. And you put in the work, David, where people appreciated you. That's why they even sent you over to my area. And because you've stuck it out, even through the bad parts, they've promoted you. And now, 4 or 6 months later, you're making triple the money, right? And you're in a better situation. And just like with your music and managing and creative collective, like your experience is in 5 years from now, to be able to say you've been doing it for 5 years, man, I'm happy I know you now, right?
Yeah.
Appreciate
He's
it, guys.
He's going to grow.
That experience. You can't.
But that's all part of the process, ain't it?
Yeah. Wait, sorry, what was that?
That's all part of the process is, growing, moving forward.
Yep. It's learning
in
how
an
to grow
industry
too.
where you can make a lot of money,
Yeah.
I didn't even know you could sell gold. I swear to God.
Me neither.
I didn't know that.
Today was a big day in the gold industry. The Feds cut interest rates by 0.5 point.
So how does that affect you for gold, though? How would
So,
that affect gold?
At first thought, for the average person, you would think interest rate cuts are good. Mortgage rates will go down, car loan rates will go down, but ultimately, gold and silver have an opposite relationship to the dollar. So if the dollar is going down, opposite, gold is going to go up. And think of it this way.
I can see that. Okay. I can
Yeah. So,
okay.
and it makes it a lot less attractive to investors or countries around the world, because if we have a lower interest on the money that they're holding, our debt, they're not getting paid out. So they want a higher interest. But
the big companies and the big money people.
Or the China, Japan, that holds a big portion of our debt. They want our interest rate high because they get paid high interest on it. But as we cut interest rates, they're going to want to move farther away from the dollar. There's not as much interest for them to invest in it. So as we lower interest rates, it tends to have an effect on the paper markets. For example, the last time this happened was during the dot-com bubble, which people lost a lot of money during that time. And it happened in 2007, right before the recession was hitting in 2008 to 11. So for us, we're busy because people who are aware of it, they kind of know this is signaling potential recession, signaling potential downfall. And that moves people to gold as a safe haven. So, there it is. You got some silver.
That's silver right there. Yes.
That's it.
Wow.
There you go.
This is what he's talking about.
That's what we are. Yeah. And so, we've been busy here. People are trying to get prepared, and you work hard for your money, and you put your money in a savings, and your money doesn't buy you what it used to. Right?
No money, cash money. I can see how that works then.
Yeah,
I was trying to understand the correlation with the interest rate change and how the gold, and you explained it very well where I can understand it now.
Yeah,
because that's a tangible something you can hold on to. You know what the value is, and it's not tied to the dollar.
Right. So, paper goes down, gold goes up. Pretty simple, and vice versa. So we've been busy here, trying to stay afloat. I'm actually at the office now.
You still at the office? Huh?
Yeah.
Show them the view.
Yeah, the view is great. Look at it. Enjoy.
I miss that view.
See the whole valley.
Oh yeah,
I miss that view so much.
It is nice, man.
There's so much going on right now in the world. When you agree, like with elections and just stuff that's happening,
Yeah, and it's.
Good talking point for them.
What's that, David?
Oh, I said that's a great talking point for you guys when you're selling gold.
Yeah. Well, even for this, most people, at different ages, right? Like David, you worked with me and you got to start learning about it. That's why you have your silver right there.
Yep. Got a little container full of it.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry.
That's it. That's it. And but at 20 years old, 25, and look at Philip at his age, he didn't know gold and silver were an option.
I really didn't. I never, until I met you, I didn't even know that they sold it. I thought countries bought gold. I didn't think individuals bought gold.
Yeah. And most people don't think of gold other than jewelry, right?
Right.
Or
Yep.
wedding rings or anything of that nature. But and at 20 years old, unless someone tells you, you don't know about it. I wish I would have bought more when I was 20. Gold was $300.
Yep.
Now it's 2,600.
Oh yeah. If you think about it, when I remember gold was $200 an ounce.
Yeah.
Way back in the day. Can you imagine if you'd have been holding on to gold and
Just
Yeah.
sat on it.
I bought several Rolex watches, and every watch I've ever bought from Rolex, because they were all gold, 18 karat gold, I sold them for more than what I paid for 'em.
Wow.
And I had one watch for 15 years. I think I sold it for a grand more than what I paid for it.
Wow.
And it was not in the best shape. The guy said if it was in better shape, I'd have gave you another 6,000 for it. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
used Rolex, right? And you still sold it for
Yeah, because
more.
they still, they're like cars, man. They hold their year model, and they're like a car. I had an '89 President Rolex, and I think I bought that thing used, and I paid 10 grand for it.
Hmm.
I wore it for all those years, and I sold it for 16 grand. No, 14 grand, 14,000.
But that's
And it's the gold. It's the gold
It's the
because
gold.
it was worth, and he said he told me I sold it to a jeweler in San Francisco. And he says, yeah, I'll sell this for 20, I think he said 20 grand. Yeah.
Yeah. And those have a resale demand too. Like gold and jewelry is different than say gold Rolex, right? A
That's
Rolex is a
totally
gold.
different. Yeah, gold
Yeah,
rings and
right.
stuff don't be like that. Yeah.
When I tell people I sell gold, they're like, "Oh, like jewelry," or they always think it's something other than what I actually do. But yeah, Rolex. If you buy it in the right form, coin, bars, even a Rolex, its value long term increases, right?
Oh, yeah.
Always has.
I gave my oldest son one, and I paid in Hawaii in 90 something, 92. And I gave it to him when he turned, I think he was 18. And he still has it. And it's probably worth, we looked on the market, and I think it was worth like 12, 13 grand, 14 grand, something like that. It went up considerably. And so he just holds on to it. Yeah, he
Wow.
wears it.
That's a nice gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, nice Rolex for 18th birthday.
Yeah, well, those were different times. Money was different. Lifestyle was different. Money was rolling.
Yeah,
There you go.
You're making 400,000 or 500,000 a month. It's a little different than where I'm at today.
yeah. Times change.
It's a lot of
Right.
money. Yeah, it was a lot of money even back then. Yeah.
So, David, I didn't know if you had anything specific or any questions that came up, but I definitely have some things I was going to discuss. And the very
Yeah.
first,
Let's start with your questions first. I would have to look for something. So
for me, it wasn't really more of a question, but it was more symbolic. Both Philip and I are wearing these great sweaters here. Your attitude.
I need me one of those now.
Yes, you're gonna have to join the club.
Your attitude determines your altitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was impactful for me because I was going through a hard time in my relationship in this moment. And I just happened to call Philip that morning and wanted to have someone to talk to, and I knew Philip was always a good person to have a soundboard with and just have a conversation with.
Yeah.
And still thank you to this day, Philip.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm going through it, he's like, well, so many people focus on the problem, not the solution. And he's like, your attitude will determine your altitude. And that hit
So
me.
true.
Yeah, man, it hit me hard because I thought of it in so many different ways and in this scenario in my relationship, as I was having a struggle, my attitude about my relationship, my attitude about my girl was negative. And the altitude of my relationship's going to stay low as I have a low mindset about it. And it made me realize that I have to think of the positive things. I have to keep my attitude high about who she is, who we are, and our relationship for my relationship to get to that altitude of high and to the place where I really was happy and more satisfied. So just this simple phrase turned it around for me and even for her and I. So, that's where when Philip met up
And it's
with,
funny, we both wore the shirts today. So we were
yeah,
both having that mental telepathy to think about
uh-huh,
it. It
yeah,
really resonates. There's so many, it's funny when you're a young kid growing up like I was in the 70s, and you're 20 years old and your uncles are saying, uh, 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 it's easy to do the wrong thing. It's hard to do the right thing. And you hear it, and these things have stuck with me over time. And then when it becomes a part of your life, and you realize those words are
what
so
they mean.
valuable.
Mm-hmm.
The early bird catches the worm. It's true. The person that's out the house first. My career took off when I started showing up early and going home late. I was just an average kind of salesman, but I wasn't putting the effort into it. You only get out of this life what you put into it. And the same with your marriage. When you don't put the effort into it, because marriage is work. To have that perfect relationship, the two people that are in that, when they have that perfect, my oldest son and his wife, they've been together probably 17, 18 years since he was like 20 something. And I don't see them ever being apart because they're a great team.
Mhm.
They just work together. They live a very comfortable life, but simple. They like simple things to do. They like going to their kids' games. They like going to a 49er game. They like going to a basketball game. But they're not like, he makes great money, but they don't do extravagant things.
And they're good partners. And like you said, it's constant work. There was a quote that there's two funny things. I think it's Joyce Myers. She was saying, she's
I
like,
like
one,
it.
there is no perfect relationship because you're in it.
But see, everybody thinks that though, don't you think, Brandon? Everybody has this image when, especially when I grew up, they showed you on TV these perfect marriages. So you assume because you don't have the knowledge that that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
And it ain't the way it is because it takes, whew,
It takes work.
talk to
And
somebody been married for 50 years. They're going to tell you, I had an elderly gentleman in Regular Ford one day. And he says, see that woman there? And I go, yeah. We've been married for 55 years. I go, okay. He says, when she was a young woman, she was a handful. And she's laughing. She's laughing her butt off. He
I'm
says, every time she would argue with me, I'd go out and change the oil. He said, I had the cleanest oil in the county because I was outside in the garage changing oil on site. The whole time she is just dying laughing. And he says, but you know what? We figured it out and we made it through.
Yeah.
And she's my best friend and I love her. And I mean, he told that story and I'm thinking, man, that's cool that they could go back to those days and laugh about it. Think about that. That's pretty cool.
And
And
that
laugh about it
advice.
now. I mean,
Yeah.
she was busted. If you would, I wish I'd had a video camera. That would have been one of those moments because he says she was a pistol. I mean, he says, but we figured it out. And we lasted 55 years. They were in the 80s and they wasn't going nowhere. And they were just happy. You could just see the joy that they have together now. But a lot of people think it's going to always be perfect. And we all get those. And when you called that day, your attitude was down.
Yeah.
And you had to lift your spirit up and your attitude up. Because it's all about how we look at things, ain't it? I mean, if you look at life, if you look at the wrong way, David, you're going to make a bad decision.
Yep.
And life is so fragile. It's a line that thick between a genius and an idiot. Life is that. I'm telling you, you can go left when you should have went right, and it can change your whole life.
Yeah.
But you knew that you wanted to fight, but your attitude wasn't in the right place. And when you gave yourself an attitude adjustment, which you did, and by the time we got off the phone, you were looking at things differently.
100%.
And you put it to work.
Yeah. That's what.
Yep.
And that's where, kind of, we talked about this before. I think the episodes before is, you have to kind of seek knowledge. You have to want to learn. And if I didn't reach out to you that day, and I wasn't honest about what I was going through and actually talk to you about it, that I don't think that would have happened the same way for me. And that night, some big things happened, and she even came to me to share some more stuff with me, where if my mindset was down where it was when I first talked to you,
You would have heard something different.
oh, and I would have reacted.
That's the problem, David. Listen to what he's saying. If your attitude's wrong and she says a certain thing, you're hearing negative, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm ready to swing back,
Right.
and I would have reacted, at that time. And when my attitude was high and I was at a great altitude, there was nothing she could tell me that night that was going to bring it down.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, and I didn't react. And I just remember her almost being in relief that she was able to say the thing she was without my reaction in a negative way.
That
Yeah.
is huge as a man in a relationship. That's huge to listen. God gave us 2 ears and a mouth for a reason. And selling is about listening. Every person tells you how to sell them. You just got to be keyed in and hear what they're saying.
Yeah. And it's like, do you want to be right, or do you want the love? Do you want the relationship? Do you want the deal, right? Or do you want to be right? And I listened that night, and I didn't have to be right. I just had to listen, and I didn't say a word, and it was a game changer. I've seen when I've spoken up when I should have listened.
See, I had a friend that was telling me that, but you were smart enough to listen to what I had to say, because I made that mistake. I had an amazing wife, but I chose to go in a different direction. And that's why I say the difference between a genius and an idiot is line that thick, because you could have made that stubborn decision and not listen.
Mhm.
That is a quality, guys, that a lot of people don't have, that they need,
Mhm.
is to be able not to overreact. Because too many times as men, we overreact. It was a guy on YouTube, and his wife was just gnawing at him. And he's sitting on the couch and he says, "Babe, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be sitting right here. I'm going to come to bed in a little bit. You can do all your yelling and screaming. I ain't going nowhere. I ain't leaving, going to no bar." And it was so funny because after a while, she just like, "Oh, it ain't working." So she just toned it down. And it was just, because that's the attitude you have to have if you're going to make things work, even in business, relationships, in life. You got to be willing to fight for it.
And when a woman like knows that they're reacting. And that's why the friend you mentioned, the wife was just cracking up that she was a pistol and she was laughing because now she can laugh about it. But in the time, in the moment when they were going through that work, when your woman sees you stand strong and have a good attitude, not react, not go off to the bar, not make a big scene, even if they don't say it, it goes so far. And it makes them feel that much more secure because it's important for a woman to feel secure. And
You really, and a lot of young men nowadays they're not being taught that, you know, and that's one of the things I think where we as a collective group can talk about these type of things, because there's no school that you go to learn to be a husband. There's no course that you can take. It's kind of on the job training, you know, you have to get in there and fight. But that day you chose, because you wanted your relationship to work, you decided that your ears were going to be open, because I could have said those words to you, but if your mind was closed and my wife is this and my blah, and you're not hearing with the words I said about the attitude, your attitude is your altitude, where you're going to go, it would have went over your head.
completely.
Right?
Yeah.
You would have went back in the room and she'd have been telling you what she was feeling, and you would have went, because sometimes the words get twisted in our head.
Mhm.
What she's saying, you're not hearing it correctly. You hear anger when she's trying to tell you, I just need you to pay attention to me and listen to me.
Right.
Because women have to get their thoughts and ideas out. They really do. They're an amazing group. You know, a man without a great woman is just, I mean, he's just average. A great woman makes you great. But the problem is when they're really good, you get to thinking you great on your own. When they're really good, and then you wake up one day and you go, oh shit, I blew it. I
Yeah,
didn't,
she
I
was
didn't
there.
realize what I had. How many guys do that?
Often.
I'm sure you've heard that story before, haven't you?
And I didn't want to make that mistake, right? So when you talked to me that day, it was, you know, one of the other quotes I was going to mention was, you know, everybody wants to find like fall in love or find this, you know, true love versus truly loving the person they're with, right?
For every part of her.
Yeah.
Every part
And
of her, like she's going to love every part of you.
right. So instead of me having this idea that like, oh, there's conflict, so this isn't this true love and this idea that we paint, you know, I chose to truly love her and listen to her that day, right? And I didn't make it about, because we all want to be heard, right? And that's kind of the world we live in now, where everyone has a voice and everyone has a right and everyone has, and I get that, but as a man in my relationship, I put her first to let her speak to me, and I let her be heard for that day. And I
You
put
could
her
have won the battle and lost the war.
exactly.
And too many
Mhm.
times we win the battle, David. And I'm talking to David because he's 25, and you know I had uncles and I had a stepdad that told me all these things, but I was a pretty hard-headed kid. I mean, I wasn't a good listener, and the thing I've done in my later years is I've become a better listener. That's because that's really the people that are highly successful are great listeners. I mean, your top tiers. You know, like a person like Donald Trump, you can tell he's not as successful as he makes himself out to be. He talks too much.
That's probably
People that are really rich don't have to tell you they're rich. They
That's
don't.
true.
You don't hear Warren Buffett bragging about how much money he got, do you?
Nope.
You don't hear Gates talking about how much money he's got. Oh, I'm really rich. Usually people that say that, they ain't really, really rich.
Well,
I mean, this is truth, though. I mean,
well, what is that? Going back to the idea of everybody wants to be heard, and he's making sure he's heard, right? Versus listening.
he is the epitome of the great con man. He puts on a great show. There's a book out telling his whole story, and he's been blessed though too. He stumbles into a lot of money, like that Apprentice show made him $400 million.
Wow.
He was broken in a joke. When he did that casino with Holiday Inn, which owns Harris, they tell in the book about he got all this equipment because they said, "Oh, we'll invest $50 million with you, but you got to prove this that you're gonna get the project off the ground." So yeah, he hired every dozer, and he was moving dirt around. Looked like he was busy. He had no permits, no nothing. He hadn't even got.
Yeah.
But Harris bought it, and they went into business with it.
Yeah. Imagine
Wow.
He's a salesman because he's got half the world, half the country believing his BS, you know?
well, the con in con man is for confidence, right? So he definitely is confident. You know, he was able to con himself all the way to presidency. Imagine
Think about that. That's a story in itself, ain't it?
And you know what? I've been in arguments sometimes where I realize how someone is so in belief of their own story and their own denial. And I'm like, man, I get it. I see how someone could get themselves this high if they believe their own story. But, you know, imagine he's obviously a smart man. He's very successful. And imagine, you know, if he was a great listener on top of that.
Oh,
you
think
know?
about it right now. I mean, he has enough going for him because he's a white male, and they're trying to tell him how he could win the thing because I've been following a lot of it, but he won't listen. He won't listen. They tell him talk about the policies, and Kamala, she baited him in. She says, you know, you got fired by 81 million people in the U.S.
Watching some of those
That sent
debates.
him to the moon, man. He couldn't handle that. I mean, I couldn't handle being fired by 81 million people, you know. Think about that. He got
I
fired by
couldn't handle
those.
watching the debates. It felt like watching one of my own arguments or arguments of people. Like it felt like too much drama. I was like, it just sounds like an immature fight, you know, with no one listening to anybody. It was rough to even hear that.
Yeah, but if you really listen to it, she did a magnificent job of putting what she wanted to put out there. You know, she really did a great, and he got the ranting and raving because she got him off his game. And the one thing about business, people that stay in control always win.
Mm-hmm.
When I first bought Rebla Ford, the guy from Ford, his name was DM Coleman, says, I'm going to teach you something that's going to make you millions of dollars. I go, okay. I'm like a gumpy. Teacher. I'm all ears. He says, this is what I want you to say to your employees every time. John, it sounds like a great idea. Let me think about it, and I'll get back to you. He says, the business is so reactionary that if you don't learn that, you're going to be like steering the ship all over the place. He says it gives you a chance to go home and think about it. He says if it's a good idea at 6 o'clock in the evening, it's going to be a good idea at 8 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so valuable. I can't even begin because you got to understand the younger me was my general manager had a name for me. He said I was the Tasmanian devil. He said you come in and you get everybody fired up and the place is in a blaze, and then you want to stack everything up. And I said, yeah, there's cutters and there's stackers. I'm the cutter. You guys stack all this wood I just cut.
Cut it.
Put the dollars in the safe, right? There's cutters and stackers.
There's cutters and stackers.
I'm a cutter.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to do no paperwork. Don't ask me to just, I'm gonna go out and close the deal. They're gonna, okay, you got that car sold, you got that car sold, you got that car sold. Just go put all the paperwork together. That's why I hired real organized people, because that wasn't something I like to do. And my youngest son is me, and he can't figure that part out.
That's why you got to build a team, right? You got to put the right people around you.
He's trying to be
I
too
know how that
independent.
goes.
You know how that goes?
Yep.
You're trying to
Nobody
build yours
gets there
now.
by themselves. That's one thing we all have to realize. Would you agree with that?
I'm sorry. Can you
Nobody
repeat
gets
that?
there by yourself. You can
Oh,
think you
agreed.
did.
Oh, I was just agreeing with you. That's exactly my situation right now. I'm not doing all this by myself at all. I have Noah helping with the editing on this. I had my friend Javi do the logo, and he does all the other art. I need him for my events and everything. And then even my girlfriend, she works on some of the art. Like everybody around me is part of my team, and they're the people I care about most.
Yeah.
See, at 25, you figured out some stuff that a lot of people never figured out. Seriously, you cannot do it by yourself. I mean, no matter how great your idea is. And my son comes up with brilliant ideas, but he needs to hire a team. And I try to give him advice, but he was, you know, that DNA stuff.
Mhm. It's real.
Oh, I can't spend an hour with him because he reminds me too much of me when I was his age. It's like, I mean, he's like 400 miles an hour because he's got all these brilliant ideas, but he has a problem because he doesn't put the team together. And and I keep telling him, I say, put a team together. I and I've tried to get him to understand that, but it's kind of hard to tell a kid when he makes a lot of money doing it his way, even though it's chaos,
Right.
that you need a team. See,
It's hard to kind of like, the shirt in that day. It's hard for people to not only ask for help, but also feel like people want to help them or even care to help them, you know? So a lot of times people feel like they have to do it alone. And
no, that's called ego. Being humble. Ego is etching God out.
that's right.
Ego is one of the worst things anybody can possess.
Mhm.
You need humility. You need faith,
Yeah.
whatever that faith looks like for you. And you need to be able to be humble enough to say, you know, that sounds like a great idea, but how do we get it from here to there? Because if you guys work together, you could figure it out. You know, when I had managers meetings, I would pay $500 for the craziest idea.
Yeah.
You know how many great ideas came because the rails were taken off and they wasn't scared to say, boss, this is going to sound crazy, but here goes.
Mhm.
That's how you grow and go, because if everybody's not afraid to speak their mind, you can do amazing things.
Mhm. And, when you don't, like obviously in that scenario, you gave people incentive. You took the rails off it and allowed them to be in a safe place to do that, right? And in a personal life, in a personal setting, a lot of people aren't confident, or they're fearful of being honest, of needing that help, or calling somebody up and saying, "Hey, I don't know how to do this. Do you mind showing me or helping me?" And when you don't do that, you're not giving someone else an opportunity to help you or shine. Because if you give someone else the opportunity to help you, that might be that coaching and helping others has been some of the best ways I've learned and grown in my life. And
It's a beautiful thing, ain't it?
yeah, and the way I look at it is, if someone's not ready to help me, or they don't, they're not in a place to, that's fine. But if I don't ask them, I'm not going to give them the opportunity to show out. You know, I even tell me that my kids that give me that opportunity to help you, because I want to. But if you don't speak up or say anything, you're taking an opportunity away from me to help you out, and I want that opportunity. So
Well, there's sometimes your kids they want to get the problem when you leave a big footprint like I did. A lot of times your kids want to prove to themselves they can do it on their own.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. Because at first I didn't understand that. And my oldest son had to explain it to me. He says, you know, Dad, we all would like to have the success you had, but we're trying to figure it out for ourselves so we can have that same feeling that you and Mom had, that we did it. Because it frustrates me because there's a lot of times I see things they're doing and I try to coach them because I'm an amazing coach. They just don't know they got a guy here sitting that if
They got the
we
cutter
work together, we could make this thing in. Because what I wanted to do is let them shine. I had my day in the sunshine, but I wanted to be in the background and help them. And what I've decided is I have to make one more run. Even as old as I am, I have to make one more run at this because I need to show them that it's still out there. They, for some reason, they never wanted to own dealerships like I did. And Chevy got in touch with me and they got a seminar on the 10th on Zoom. And I'm going to sit in on it. And, you know, I'm going to have to raise a couple mil, but I'll figure that out.
Yeah, that'll happen. I said, you'll make that happen. I'm sure you will.
Well, because they would get stock, you know, people would get stock in the company. And if we get a store that can make $10 million a year and you own 15% because you put in X number of dollars, that's a lot of money, bro.
So how do I do this?
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Keep listening. Keep listening.
Yeah,
That's
I'm listening.
You know,
My
so
cat
I
came to
want
listen too.
Yeah, you know, the car business, that's why Warren Buffett got in it. It's an amazing business. It's an amazing business. I was in a little town and I was making $3-4 million a year. And, but for some reason, the kids, the only one that really has an interest in doing it is my oldest son. But my two younger ones always fought me when I said, let's open up a dealership. Because there was times my daughter had the money and I said, let's go get a dealership. Oh, no, Dad, we don't want that. I go, you didn't like that house we had? You didn't like that jet we had? You didn't like the yacht we had?
seemed like you liked it
The
when you were
house in the
older.
Bay Area we had?
Yeah.
I mean, that was all from selling cars.
Yeah. David and I,
For
we
some
were
reason-
talking about that a little bit today, where it's, and I definitely have had moments where I was hard headed, but when you're trying to give someone some advice and it's hard for them to take it, right? And it's, you know, it goes back to a lot of different factors, right? There's always more to it than that one moment.
Mhm.
But yeah, even I've had some times where, you know, personally, I'm giving advice, and because of the timing or the person who gives it to me at the time, like I found myself rejecting it, even though ultimately they probably were right, you know. But in that moment, it was hard to hear it, and I rejected it just out of that feeling or that moment, and I still have to figure out what that comes from. But yeah, it's hard sometimes to give or get advice from somebody if it's
Well, it depends who you get the advice from. Would you agree?
yeah,
You knew when you and I were talking, I had no reason to tell you something that I hadn't already lived and seen.
right,
And what I heard in the conversation was a young man like myself that didn't listen to my wife, and I only heard what I thought I heard.
right,
So it's easy for me to give you advice because I made the mistakes and had an amazing wife and not listen to her. And you see other young men and you try to tell them that, hey, don't be mean. Don't do that. You know, my goal with this podcast and everything else is if I can help one young man to make a right choice. And I'd like, you know, I'm a coach. That's all I am. I'm a coach on life.
Yeah.
And I'm very good at it because I've lived an amazing life. But I want other people to live amazing life. And what I want to share with them is some of the mistakes I made. I'm not proud of the mistakes I made. I mean, but there are lessons in that.
Yeah, it's your testimony. Yeah.
And I want to share it with the world. Like a friend told me one day, we had a little used car lot here in Vegas. And we had spent about 30 minutes talking. And he says, Phil, do me a favor. And I go, yeah, sure. He says, leave it. Don't take it with you.
That's how this came about.
That's how this came about. And to have the young David, 25, you 40, me 72, we see life in different lanes right now.
Yep.
But I've been through things you're going to go through.
Yeah.
Might be in a different way, but you're going to go through some of the same things. Because life is one thing that Kamala always says, we're more alike than we like to think.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're black or white or whatever, we all have similar feelings. It's no accident that when you're in the church, the minister he can be speaking on something he's planning 2 weeks ahead. Why is he always talking to you? It's like when I go to church, it's like
he knew
is he in my head?
that you needed that message.
I mean, it hits you like, but what you realize is so many of us are going through similar things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you definitely helped me that day. And, that's why I'm even here on this call or this podcast, because I know even in that day, you had something to help me with. And at my age, even when I'm talking to David and I'm seeing that there's things that I'm helping him with, or we're talking about, like you said, you're a coach. And if I could help people not only grow and become better for themselves, grow myself as well, but learn.
Think how great that would feel, though.
Yeah.
Let's say our podcast takes off and we get young men to listen into it, and old men, because if Henry Ford says if you're 8 or 80 and you quit learning, you die.
You die. Yeah.
Yep.
You got to look at life that I'm never going to stop learning.
Yeah.
That's going to keep you young, your heart young. There was a dealer in Ukiah, California. Harvey Harper was his name. The guy made $10 million a year. You'd be in the meeting, and he was in his late 70s, maybe early 80s. He has more questions than anybody, and we're sitting there going, he's 80 years old. He's asking more questions than anybody because he was just locked in that he didn't know everything. It was so amazing to see in real time.
Yeah.
Think about that. Here's a guy that's, when you're in a dealer group, whoever is to the furthest on the left is the most profitable. Well, Harvey Harper was at the far left because he was the most profitable because he owned everything. He had been in business for like 70, 100 years, 80 years, great long time. But the whole time we were all sitting there and we're way younger than him and we're looking like, damn. It made you reassess how I got to look at this thing because you're going, shit, I ain't making nowhere near what he's making. He asking a million questions.
Be curious. He's the most curious one of them all.
Of the whole group. And writing everything down. It's just amazing when you see really successful people doing the right thing. And it's just amazing to see.
Yeah. Well, I think we got to wrap it up. But one thing one thing that kind of just stood out and that I want to repeat is the fact that when you are having a hard time, when you are going through something, that you do reach out to the good people in your life and you give them an opportunity to help you through it, and it's something to happen when you're a man reaching out to another man, right? And helping grow that person that's going to give you good advice, because there's some people you may not want to reach out to.
Amen. You got to really determine that. Look at how they're living their life and determine if that's the way you want to live your life.
But a good friend is going to check you, is going to tell you what you need to hear And that's the person you don't want to avoid. Reach out to that person, talk to those people.
Amen.
And that's what
Amen.
I hope we can do here too, is have people that reach out to us, and we are here to help. So,
And I hope we can inspire people.
The three of us get people excited about this thing called life.
We will. I can't wait.
All right. Thanks,
All right,
guys. I
guys.
really appreciate all of you.
keep your attitudes high,
Oh.
determine your altitude.
Amen. I'm staying there. All right.
We'll get
Brandon,
you
you
one,
wanted
David.
to say
All
what
right.
you say before we leave?
Yes. Have a good day and a better tomorrow.
Amen.